Hello there, folks. Welcome to Paranormal Roundtable. I'm your host, Josh Turner, and with me is...
Hey, everybody. My name's Armando Salazar. A friend calls me Sal. Everybody calls me Sal. So, hey, welcome, and I'm going to be your co-host.
And everybody calls me Wolf, so...
Wolf and Sal.
Wolf and Sal. That's what we're going to go by. So, if a lot of you that may or may not know, this is going to be my pilot episode, my first episode of Paranormal Roundtable. And I've been on Vic Cundiff's show, Dogman Encounters.
Great show.
Many, many times. And have been asked by a lot of people if I was going to start a show or do a show or I should start a show. And so here I am. And that's what we're doing. And I have a lot of stories in my entire life. In my entire life, I have collected a ton of stories, and I've given Vic most of what I had with the Dogman, but I have a lot of other stories to talk about. I have a lot of tales to tell, and I still get a lot of people giving me stories, and a lot of them are show-worthy. Some of them aren't really that long, but you know what? If you feel like you have a tale to tell, you have a story to tell, send it to me, and we will... take a look at it and we'll see what we got. Or if you want to come on the show and talk about it yourself, we'll see what we can do to accommodate that. My email is daswolfman88@gmail.com. So you hit me up and we'll talk. Also, if you want to send me a friend request on Facebook, I'm open to getting friend requests or whatever if you're willing to put up with me on Facebook. And right now, I just want to talk a little bit about myself and what I'm all about and what we're going to be talking about. And this show is going to run the gamut. I'm talking Dogman, werewolves, Bigfoot, UFOs, goblins, mermaids, the boogeyman, shadow people.
Yeah, we're open to discussion for everything.
Whatever
because it falls under the paranormal realm. And so in the paranormal realm, well, it's a broad spectrum. So guess what? We're game to talk about it, discuss it, and hopefully we can help somebody make sense.
What about the Loch Ness Monster? We're going to talk about that?
Yeah, we can talk about that too. You know, it's all about trying to help people make sense of it, because the more ideas we bounce off each other, you know, and we're trying to make sense of it. And that just means employing some common sense as much as possible, because there's going to be things that are just going to be unexplainable. And that's just part of the...
Well, that's why I brought you along, Armando, because I don't try to make sense of it. I don't. I just, it's there. I had an encounter with a Dogman creature when I was 15 years old. I remember it in my mind, and it's indelibly burned into my mind.
Give us that quick rundown. And for all the listeners and folks out there.
Episode 55 of Vic's show, if you go to the archives of Vic's show, I'm on episode 55. And just for anybody that would like to go back and learn and look that up, I was on 55, 58, 59, 116, 137, 138, I believe 166, 186, 188. And actually, as we're recording right now, my latest show is coming out tonight, and I don't know what number that is. That's coming out tonight, but by the time you hear this, that will have already aired. And so, anyways, my show, we're going to do a whole bunch of stuff, and we're real excited about it. I'm sorry that it took so long for us to get together and get this done. This was supposed to have been done back in the summer, right?
Yes, it was.
and then I ended up getting really fat and having high blood pressure. So I had to lose over 70 pounds, and I ended up in the hospital in November for 6 days in the ICU. And so it set me back for a while. I couldn't really do a whole lot. And now I'm good. I'm ready to go. And we're doing this. So I want to turn it over to mi amigo here, Sal, and he's gonna talk a little bit about himself and what he's doing and why he got into this whole co-host position here that he's in.
Yeah, it's kind of like sidekick, I guess. I don't know.
Sidekick. Well, no, you're not the sidekick. We're equals here. But you had your own kind of introduction to the paranormal, if I should say.
Yeah, well, when you compare me to the average person who's had an encounter with either UFOs You know, I mean, I've listened to lots of episodes on YouTube and lots of encounters of different sorts, from people running into ghosts, people running into creatures they'd never seen. And of course, with that means Bigfoot, Dogman, even Goatman, and other these odd creatures, such as the one that's talked about in the Sykesville Monster. And you can look that up. The Sykesville Monster was a strange creature these people claim to have ran into. You can look that up on YouTube, and there's a lot of good stuff out there that'll tell you about it. But as far as me, here's my story. I got interested in this topic, all the weird unknown things. Way back in the day when I was a little kid, about 7, 8 years old, I saw the Patterson-Gimlin film. And for a kid who grew up around animals, and I know there's plenty of you people out there that's grown up around animals, you watch them move and everything else, you can see their muscles, you can see their whole body movement. And then, of course, when you see someone in a suit, a fake suit, well, you easily say, well, that's completely obvious. Even some of the good ones you can look at and say, that's not a real thing. But, looking at that Patterson-Gimlin film, I was just looking at it and I was amazed because you could see the muscles working. And I'm sure there's a lot of people saw the same thing, see the muscles working. It was fluid. He wasn't a loose freaking costume. And then also there's the thing about, why does it have breasts? What guy did that back then? But that's what got me interested. And then for many years I was interested. I tried to listen and see shows, all that stuff. The In Search Of shows with Leonard Nimoy. That was something.
Captain, what's his name? Spock.
Spock, yeah. And so he did that show for a while. And every chance I got, I saw, I wanted to watch those episodes. Well, of course, that those were few and far between because, I was a little kid.
Well, back then, and just for you young people, back then you had 5 channels at most. At 3. Most. If you lived out in the country like I did when I was, two or 3, and you had to go out and turn the antenna. And so if you got a chance to watch one of those shows that had the In Search Of, you were like, oh God, and you sat through the commercials and you couldn't DVR it and get through the good stuff.
Yeah.
And I remember watching those shows and to touch on what you said, so, the thing had breasts. That's the linchpin of that.
I didn't really, back then I was a little kid. I didn't notice them that much. The biggest thing that caught my eye when I was a kid was the fact that the muscles in the legs were just working.
It looked very real.
And I'd looked at, I'd been around cattle and horses and stuff a lot.
The technology was there at that time to make something.
No, there wasn't. I think Bill Munn, that famed, he was a famed costume maker for Hollywood.
And the Gimlin film was 1967? Was it 1967?
It was 1967. Yeah, right. Actually, yeah, it was interesting.
So here's the thing, Sal, I was going to ask you, if you could just give the listeners a quick rundown. You've had some Bigfoot.
I've had a couple.
Yeah. The closest I've ever come, I've had two things that I'm really, really quickly, and then you can say yours just so. You've probably had more closely Bigfoot than I have. I heard wood knocking. And when I was with my wife one day near the lake, and I heard it. I mean, she was like, "Oh my gosh," and.
Would it sound like a baseball bat or something?
It did sound like wood, like a baseball bat, like literally, yeah, like just a Louisville Slugger hitting a tree. Yeah. And she was like, "That's what that is," and it followed us. It was so weird. And the other account I had is a story that I am going to go on Vic's show one day, and I'm going to do on Bigfoot Eyewitness. I'm going to do this show. I've been talking about it for a while. Happened when I was a little kid, and I didn't actually see it, but I was at a birthday party, a little get together where a bunch of other kids that were there saw it, and I missed it. But so I never really counted as like having seen a Bigfoot, but everybody was freaking out claiming that they saw one, and I was at that gathering. Mm-hmm. But anyway, didn't mean to cut you off. I'm sorry. I just get real excited when we're talking about this kind of stuff. I'm like, wow, and I get excited. But go ahead and tell what's happened to you.
As far as when I finally decided, after many years, I decided to really start looking into this phenomena. I'd always had that picking thing in the back of my head about the unknown, the mysteries, if you will. So, after I did, a career in the military. I put in about 21 years, so I'm a
Wow.
retired vet. And
Thank you
active
for
duty.
your service. I appreciate it.
Likewise. So here it is. I'm deciding to start looking into things a lot closer. And of course, over the years, anytime any type of Bigfoot show or mystery show that came on television, I was there to watch it. Back in the 90s, I loved Unsolved Mysteries. It was great. And of course, X-Files was
Unsolved
huge then.
Mysteries.
Yeah.
Yeah. What was the guy's name?
Robert Stack.
Oh yeah. He was awesome.
Oh yeah, that guy had a great voice and great narrator for it.
Speaking of which, really quick into that Unsolved Mysteries, there was a guy who, one of the stories I'm going to talk about on tonight is about Goatman, and there was an author named Burt Wall, and he was on Unsolved Mysteries, and he talked about the Devil's Backbone, which is about 30 miles north of here.
We're more or less living in that general
vicinity, and the Devil's Backbone.
know.
We're in that whole corridor, and it's a pretty good story. But anyway, I didn't want to. That's
So just to give you the brief rundown of my experiences was the first one that I went out with a friend who's passed on now. His name was Dale Ryan. I met him, and really nice, easygoing guy. He grew up around Sweeney, and he lived there his whole life till he passed on.
Sweeney,
from
Texas.
Sweeney, Texas, right? And I'm sure a lot of you listeners out there that have been at this for a while and been on Facebook and a lot of these groups and everything else, you ran across Dale Ryan. Well, I met the guy in person, great guy, and we went out to his little area that he had procured for himself. And ironically, it was only about 3 to 5 miles away from, the place where he lived. And I was really completely just taken aback when I saw that. But he took me out there after, of course, he said it took him a while to find out who owned that property that he was interested in. And of course, he found out, then got permission. Shoot, the owner even gave him a key that he could go in there and piddle around, because he promised the owner no hunting, no nothing. I'm just here doing what I do. I research Bigfoot, and that's what he did. So he took me there, and we drove in there in his truck. And this is the first time, of course. And we drove in there, and we stopped at his favorite parking spot in that area. And I'll tell you right now, up until that point, till we stopped, when we were driving through that area, first things first, there were a few trailer houses in that property. I would say it was probably anywhere around 30 to 50 acres, somewhere in there.
Yeah, because I've heard that Bigfoot live in trailer houses.
Well, no, you got to check this out.
I'm just messing with
you got to check this out. As soon as we drove through there was stuff all over the place, as if people were living there, but you knew they weren't living there because the grass was growing up there. Heck, there was 2 or 3 four-wheelers.
Wow.
Just sitting out there.
So they were just abandoned.
It looked like it was abandoned. It looked like whoever lived there had just tucked tail and run, packed up what they could grab and left. And that's what it looked like, But that was driving through there, so that got my attention. And then we got out to the spot where he liked to park, and he showed me the area that he kept an interest in and kept an eye on most of the time. And I'm telling you, not more than 5 to 10 seconds after we both got out of the truck, was just standing around, and I was looking around at the area. It was kind of open, but I was thinking to myself, what's going on? And the next thing I know, from about 100 to 200 yards away, I hear a wood knock. And it sounded to me like it was somebody, it was wood on wood. The easiest way I could, explain it to people would be like if somebody grabbed a Louisville slugger and smacked it up against a big tree. It was that loud pop, just that big wood sound, whack. So, that was my first experience. We didn't experience anything else after that. And, and I was thankful, and we spent, another 30, 40 minutes there. He was just explaining his area to me, and we left. And unfortunately, I never got a chance to go back down there with him to really get a good, serious, overnight stay out there at his little spot, because he told me at night they come out there, and never came to fruition. God rest his soul. Hey, we're trying to keep doing the same thing you were doing there, Dale. But, this leads me to my second, and like I said, I didn't see anything. I only caught wind of the signs, if you will. The second one, I went out to Sam Houston National Forest, and this was about 2 or 3 years ago. And one of my buddies that's into this same area, his name is Joe. And, I met him, and then he said, hey, we're going out to me and this other guy named Shane from Southern Bigfoot Alliance. Hey, Shane, how you doing? We went out there, and we stayed about 5 days, 4 nights. from a Tuesday basically to a Saturday night, give or take. Maybe that might be 5. But point being is we stayed out there up until the weekend because we had to leave over the weekend. You had a bunch of rowdy college kids that went out there, decided to camp out in the area where, near the area where we were at. So that didn't help. The noise thing didn't help us. So we went out there, and one night we were sitting out there because every evening, as soon as the sun went down, we'd go out there and we'd just start listening. We'd look around and see what happened. Never mind that, folks. Technical difficulties,
Computer.
So, anyways.
Computers are dumb. They keep on. That's just,
it always happens. But hey,
they're dumb until the uprising, when then Skynet takes over.
Yes.
And then you know what? I'm sorry, computer. I'm sorry. And then I will apologize once you're that smart. And I'm on your side. Humans are the bad guy.
So as I was saying, we showed up out there, and every night it was quiet up until Friday night, and that's when all those kids showed up. But those nights we were able to just sit out there and listen. And, of course, Joe wanted to go out and snoop and poop, in the dark. Now, mind you, there was no moonlight. You get inside the thick
And you guys didn't have any NVGs or anything?
No, yeah, we had no night vision devices.
You're just wandering around blind.
With a freaking flashlight.
Yeah.
And you turn on a flashlight in pitch darkness.
And that's how you find Bigfoot. He's just wandering around blind.
We went out there.
Tried and true method.
Yes. Of course, we went short distances because I told him, I said, we can't go out there and find Bigfoot like this. I said, it's like an adult playing
hide and seek
with a blind 5-year-old. And I'm like, Joe, we're the blind 5-year-old, and Bigfoot's the adult. And so, but needless to say, we took a jaunt.
They can see you.
Oh,
you
yeah.
can't see them.
That's
my big beef with swimming in the ocean. Like I will go into the ocean a little bit, but I can't see. And whatever's in there can see me and my tasty legs, and believe me, they're tasty looking. No, seriously though,
that's a good analogy.
They can see them. I mean, they can see me as a giant meal, and because I'm like a big seal out there, and I just got this image of that Jaws picture coming up from behind, underneath me when I'm flopping around on my wake. What is it called? The boogie board or whatever.
Yes.
Yeah, we were down in Port Aransas with my nephews, and my wife's like, go out there with them. I'm like, you know what? I'm going to be a lot more inviting. I got a lot more stuff going on, like a lot more meat to eat. They're skinny; they might get away with it, but not me. That shark's going to see me, and that's what reminds me of. Like, you guys are just out there feeling around in the dark.
Shining flashlights.
You'll walk up right up on one of them. What is this? Is this a pectoral muscle?
So, needless to say, it's that analogy. And so we did our jaunt, and there was a tank out there. And for those of you that are not from Texas, what I mean is a tank.
Big
when you
pond.
hear, in the common vernacular, is a pond out there, right? And of course, we went out there and we went around that area for a little bit. We were out there moving around for about 30, 40 minutes, and then we came right back. Actually, we were no more than 150 meters from our campsite. So by the time we came back to the campsite, we'd only been out there that short amount of time. So as soon as we got back, we were sitting in there at the fire still listening in. And then, of course, out in the distance, while we were out there, we had heard, what sounded like somebody or something going, woo, really loud.
Mm-hmm.
And as soon as that happened, right, and it happened multiple times, but as soon as that happened the first time, we noticed the coyotes just started up a racket, yip, yip, yip everywhere, and they're just going at it full strength. And then we heard that woo again. And as soon as that happened, it's like those, boom, that was like the cue for the coyotes to shut it down. So they, and we thought that was strange, but it happened several times. So, and luckily, Joe had the forethought. He just pulled out his phone and he started recording. And, by this time, unfortunately, it sounded off like it was far off distance, maybe 400 yards, maybe more. There weren't any houses for at least 3 to 5 miles from where our campsite was.
I got a question though. You said that it was like a woo. I've never in my life heard anything like that. Yeah. And now I have actually heard what I was told by a friend of mine near an area outside of my hometown, near Taylor, Texas. I went out with a friend of mine who likes to hunt hogs near this bottom out there, and he said that he saw real briefly, it wasn't something that, show worthy, but he saw something come out of the brush on two legs, looked like a wolf. And he said that he could hear it like all the time near his property.
Mm-hmm.
Now, when I heard that, and like I compared it, to some of the sound clips I've gotten of Bigfoot, sounds completely different. Like what you heard, you do believe that was Bigfoot, right?
Yes, I believe it.
And I think it was too, because I think that's what it is, because that doesn't sound anything like the Dogman. If anybody's heard the Dogman, it is the most ungodly, bone-chilling sound, I don't want to hear either one of them. When I'm out in the woods, I'm a little too close. If I can hear them at all, I'm going to be scared. But that what you're talking about, that sounds distinctly Sasquatch, because I know people are going to be like, well, how do you know that was a Bigfoot?
Yeah, and that's the thing. Like I said at the beginning, I didn't see anything, but that particular sound, that woo sound, I don't know of any indigenous creatures in Texas that make that noise. Now we get mountain lions, all that stuff here, and I've listened to tons of recordings, and I've even heard fox and everything else, hogs, and none of them make that sound. I've never heard it before.
Chipmunks. No, I'm just kidding.
No, but like I said, it's that caught my attention. So, like I said, Joe pulled out his phone and just started recording. Well, we started walking forward in the direction of where the sound had came from. We knew we weren't going to get
in
close.
The dark.
Well, out where we're in the camp, it was an opening, so there was
I was about to say you're going toward it.
Yeah. There was a little slight bit of light. I mean, as much as you can get when there's really no moon, and plus we had a campfire going, so we were going closer to that body of water. And by the time we got about 60 yards from the nearest shoreline to us. And of course, this body of water was about 15 yards across. So on the other side was about 75 yards. By the time we got that far, Joe's still recording, and all of a sudden, we hear what sounded like a rock clack. Me personally, I was just, kind of dumbfounded, but at the same time, and the more I thought about it, I said, it did sound like a rock clack, but I thought there's no rocks around this area in order to make those clacks. So since then, after thinking much thought, I said, what if the Sasquatch, and I thought it was a Sasquatch, I could say, mouth shaped kind of like ours, the whole 9 yards, and people tend to, click their tongue off the top of their
It could be a form of language or something.
Right, or just a warning signal, something sounds like
communication in some form, yeah.
And
but not necessarily a rock.
Correct.
Yeah,
correct.
That makes sense.
It's a crisp pop whenever you put your tongue to the roof of your mouth and you click it.
And
right?
Did you say this area where you were at, there was a man-made tank?
Yeah,
because I have heard that they habituate in areas where there's water.
Oh, yeah, that makes sense.
Man-made tanks is something that they will go and they will get into. Yeah. I've heard Dogman does it too.
Yeah, I mean, it's when you think about it, common sense. These are some people believe they're spiritual demons, other things, but when we're talking about the physical creature, a physical creature needs water. Mm-hmm. The way that just
even I've heard that like. People say that they're interdimensional, or that they come through a wormhole, or what is it, some sort of portal? Yeah. Well, once they come to this side, then you still need to have nourishment in some form, right?
Correct.
I would think so.
I would agree with that.
The thing that I saw when I was 15 was definitely flesh and blood.
Yes.
Yeah. So I mean, there's people that believe that it was demonic, Diablo, if you will, but to me. It just looked like a big creature, terrifying creature that could easily, hurt you. And I think that you probably came across something. I mean, there was something out there for sure.
Yeah, and like I said, I didn't see anything, but I'm of the opinion that we had the Bigfoot, the Sasquatch, watching us because we were the only ones out there. There was a couple other campers down the road, and they were inside their camper travel trailers.
They were smart. They were
travel trailers. We're out there in the open with tents,
Right. But the smart people were indoors.
And so, I mean, that's about the extent of my Bigfoot experiences, if you will. I can't say I've really had any ghost experiences, excuse me.
But you did tell me one time when we were just shooting the breeze, you had told me that you had You and your wife had found something like a structure of some kind.
Oh, yes. That's to add to that story. Now that area we had gone.
Is this the same corridor?
Well, no, this is in the same area where we got the
near Conroe or what?
Yeah, it's out there. It's out there. Sam Houston.
And let me tell you, listeners out there now. Me and we are Texans. All right, we're from Texas. You're from Brownwood, and I'm from Taylor.
Yeah, I grew up in Brownwood.
And let me tell you something. This straight off the bat, a lot of the listeners are going to be from out of state. Now I get this all the time. We are not a desert, folks. Okay. The cowboys with the what is it called? The little things blowing,
the tumbleweeds
or whatever. This ain't a Clint Eastwood. It's in the spaghetti western, dude. That's actually filmed in Italy. That's why they call it spaghetti western. No, once you get out near Fort Stockton and maybe beyond, or Junction, probably out past Junction and west to El Paso, that is desert. But when you're this side of Junction, I would say Junction probably, right? Mm-hmm. When you're this side of Junction, and I mean east. Everything east, there's forests. I mean, really thick forests. Now, Austin, San Antonio, Houston. It's all built into a forest. I mean, it's all woods. And now that area that you're talking about, Sal, that Conroe area, that whole corridor from 45 down Dallas down to Houston is woods on both sides. If you walked in there, you'd get lost. And let me tell you something. That is what we call the big thicket. Excuse me. Yes. The big thicket. The big thing is the piney woods, yeah, because that is one of two places in the country that's considered jungle. The other one being the Florida Everglades, because of the thickness of that. So I have heard so many stories about people finding structures. Yeah. And now go ahead and tell the listeners about
that little deal with the structures. In the same area where my buddy Joe had recorded that particular rock clack. We left it at rock clack. We don't really know if they popped we don't know what made that sound. We don't know if they made it with a popping noise off their, clicking the tongue on the roof of their mouth or rocks. We don't know that, but it definitely sounded like a rock click. Joe recorded it, but we went back on a different occasion and we went there during the day, and I took my wife, and we out behind that body of water, we during the daylight, we traipsed back in there. I'd say we probably went in maybe 50 to 100 yards behind those body of water. And we found the arced trees that people talk about. And, but no X structures. The only time I had any type of, the only time I saw an actual X structure was, I would say, probably 6 months after my wife and I had gone up to the Dallas-Fort Worth area to visit some of my family, to go visit a cousin of mine, and we were coming back, and as we were making our way through Sam Houston National Forest, right outside of Conroe, it's really thick, and once you get to Conroe, it kind of opens up because it's Conroe. But when we were coming through there, I just happened, my wife was driving, I'd been driving most of the way, and she decided to drive, but I looked off to the right side, and she's driving along. I look off to the right side, and right passing by me, I see what looks like a big X structure near the edge of the road. And I kept looking, and of course, we kept driving. I told my wife about it, and she said, okay. She kind of just took it in stride, didn't really pay attention to me, but the more I thought about it, and then I said, that looked like an X structure. And when I looked back, I remember seeing that there was like a culvert there. Now, for those people who are been out on roads and they've seen washouts and all this stuff, the culverts were put in so, you wouldn't have flooding and all this other stuff. But I think they also serve a secondary purpose. And I'm sure there's plenty of people out there, plenty of researchers will agree that, those things are used as corridors, so they don't have to climb up on top of the road. They can just go underneath the road.
They're not made by people just to be, you're not saying that their people make them for them. You're saying that they're just used by them.
Yeah, they're used by them. Yeah, this is,
Yeah, because I want to make sure and clarify that, because people be like, they don't make them for that, Cause...
No, it serves two purposes, for them, well, for us.
And like we had talked about before, I believe we were talking about an article that we read was in California, where they're actually making these overpasses for wildlife to go across, and it looks just like what would you call, like substrate or whatever.
Okay, that right there, to me has always been fascinating because, again, animals, humans, path of least resistance. and we could probably just talk on this point longer, but
Well, just to wrap it up though, because I'm fascinated about you said, because you had told me you found the structure with these
from what I saw.
Broken wood, like
Yes.
something, and just to clarify, I'm a big guy. And I am a very, very muscular, big guy. I have some fat on me. I ain't gonna lie to you, but I'm a big boy, and I'm a very strong man. And you know because you've been to the gym with me, you've seen me lift. Now you've told me before that you didn't think I, with my strength, would have been able to snap these logs and put them in place. So it had to have been something of really supernatural strength to do this.
But we'll never truly know, of course. But the way they were broken, there's no human.
Sal, even though you've seen me bench, you still don't think I could build that?
No.
Okay. No. All right. Well, I just thought I'd check because.
But anyways,
I like to think I'm the strongest thing around, but I know Bigfoot and Dogman got me beat.
But anyways, we could talk Bigfoot all night, but some of the things that really get me going is these the odd reports of these other lesser known odd creatures. And they've done a few on Monster Quest and a few shows like that, but the one that always got my attention that I'd love to hear more about is the one they call the Goatman. Now, when I was in the Army,
that's the one that grabs your goat.
Maybe so. But when I was in the Army, we'd be out at shooting ranges, and we were out there one time. This was years ago, but we were at a shooting range, and some guy came up. I still had Sasquatch on the brain. And some guy came out of there, and it was late at night. We'd been firing all night, because this was qualification. And we were firing, and it was going to be an all-nighter, just plain and simple. But we had the break in the evening, and it was getting dark, and we're not going to start up shooting until it's dark.
Where was this at?
At Fort Hood, believe it or not.
At the Hood, yeah.
Yeah, at Fort Hood. And that's
in Killeen, if anybody knows, that is actually the largest military base in the entire country. Uh-huh. It's like its own city.
Yeah. So, we were out there at that shooting range, and the guy mentioned Goatman in passing, and I said, Goatman? I'm thinking to myself, I've heard of Bigfoot. I still, at that point in time, had not yet heard about what everybody nowadays calls Dogman. And then, of course, so here's the second thing I've heard about as far as an upright walking creature. But this gentleman.
So did they tell you any stories?
No stories. They just mentioned the Goatman.
How about
it was very short.
I'll tell you a story about Goatman. How about that? There we go.
We can do that.
We can do that, yeah.
I need to hear something.
Okay, all right.
Because it was just in passing that this guy said, there's stories about a Goatman, and he left it at that.
Well, I got some stories about Goatman. Now, I don't have as many Goatman stories for those of you who know me from the Dogman, but I got some Goatman stories. One of the things that I know about the Goatman is that it's always upright. Now, I rarely hear of any. Actually, I don't say rarely. I don't think I've ever heard of them being on all fours. Have you?
Well, like I said, I'm as far as Goatman's concerned, I'm more or less on the ignorant side. I've not heard a lot of stories, and the few that I have, I've not really looked at it in a serious manner like I would.
Like Dogman, you haven't researched it like we have. Well, the thing about Bigfoot, we know that we had talked about this once before, that because Mimi, you've talked a lot about these things the last couple years, but Bigfoot tends to be upright, and then he will go on all fours if necessary. But Dogman is the opposite. It will be on all fours and typically, and then go up. That's kind of the opposite. And then Goatman, all I've ever heard about Goatman is that it walks around on two legs.
Right.
The tendency is there too when you think of a creature like the Goatman. I believe, and the way I believe, I will explain that on a later show. I'm not going to get into this whole spiel about the Book of Enoch and everything else, but
later show.
Later show. The Goatman is like a satyr. It looks like a satyr. It looks like Pan. Mm-hmm. But I also get stories about another type of Goatman, and this one is, as I think, a lot more terrifying. It's a big, bulky, hulking type creature with a big goat type head that kind of resembles the demonic entity. I don't want to say God because it's not my God, but a demonic entity known as Baphomet. I don't know if people have heard of that. And, of course, there's been many pictures supposedly of Goatman on there. I don't know if they're just getting Slayer album covers and putting but
hard to tell,
Goatman. So, anyway, I got one around a lake, And these people were out. They were vacationing, and I'll just tell you, it's close by here. It's a lake, and they're where this spot was at. There's an area where you can camp, and then there's like these restrooms. They have these restrooms, and now I know if anybody knows this area, like when you go out there, the lake I'm talking about, Armando, the restrooms. There's like a park ranger. And sometimes they don't do their job very good because I've been out there in the middle of the night, and the restrooms are still wide open. They don't close them like they're supposed to because they have a lot of spots they got to hit. I suppose that's what it is. But these particular people were out. There were 4 of them. There was 3 girls and a guy, and they were all out in a little campsite by the lake. And the one female got up to use the restroom. And she didn't want to use the porta-john because those things are horrible. And I'll tell you right now, they're always full of spiders, dude. I mean, I opened the door of one of them one day, and one of them just flew and hit me in the face and tried to eat me. But it was probably about the size of my thumbnail. But it was terrifying. I'm terrified of those things. So anyways, she says that she went, and it was actually, I'm not going to say she said because it was the guy that was with him that gave me the story of what happened to her. But anyways, she ended up, being hysterical. What happened was she went in to see if the restroom was available to be open, and it was. Okay, so she went in there to use her bathroom, do her business in the bathroom, and while she's in the stall, she hears somebody else walk into the restroom. When this said thing walked into the restroom, because I don't say it was a person, I don't know, she heard a clip clop like hooves, going into the restroom, and of course you can figure if this is a Goatman story, that's probably what it was. So she sees it too. She sees like these, like she's like, what in the heck is that? And she said she smelled a really musty odor. It was like a wet dog mixed with like a horse stable. And I kind of laughed when she said she's using the restroom and she smells an odor. I'm sorry, but it really cracked me up. I know how it sounds, but anyway, I got a chuckle out of that. But anyway, all seriousness, this thing comes in there and she's like, what is that? And then she said that whatever it was large and it was kind of bouncing off of the walls. She could hear it kind of moving around and she heard it kind of making a snorting noise. And she was like, what is that? And she thought, did somebody bring a horse into this? What is that? A horse in here? Well, this thing goes up like by the stall, like walks by the stall. She gets she sees like a glimpse of a black foot, like a hoof, I should say. And there was like this fur going up the hoof. And she's like, what in the heck is that? And you know how you can see through the stall, if you go left to right,
there's a crack.
You can see through the crack, yeah. And so I hate using public restrooms; it's horrible. But anyway, you can see. And so the story that was told to me that she said to the guy that she saw this thing peer in at her, and the way that it was described was like it was the god Pan, that's the
mythical creature,
the mythical
satyr.
Creature of Pan, the satyr, whatever.
Satyr,
it had a human-like face. She said that when it was moving back and forth, but that it was the face looked very old, like it was like an old man, And she said it looked angry, like an angry old man, and that it put its hand over the top of the stall and pulled on the door. So she starts screaming at the top of her lungs and made so much noise that, this thing kind of backed off, and she's freaking out, and she's trying to grab her cell phone or whatever, and is trying to call her friends, but the screams made not only her friends come, but also the campers that were next to their campsite. They came out and they're like, what the heck's going on? Somebody's being murdered. Jason from Friday the 13th is killing somebody in the bathroom. So they all run toward the restroom, and this thing came running out. Now, at that point, he claimed that himself and the 2 females and 2 other campers that were next door to them actually saw this thing run out and then go across the road and into the woods, into a bunch of cedar trees.
Wow.
And that it had black fur, like as best he could see, and it was a human shape, but it had like a hoof looking. He said he caught a glimpse of a hoof, like what it looked like, and that's all he could say, and that she was just in hysterics and was laying in the floor of the stall, wouldn't come out, and started to attack them when they were trying to get her to come out. That was a pretty messed up story. Now,
I got a couple of questions. I mean, it's really interesting, and I want folks to know that these are the stories relayed to Wolf. He's not saying this is
the gospel.
Certain, this is the gospel. Yeah, it's not. He's not saying this is a story relayed to him. We can only sit here and discuss and speculate what this was, judging by the description, of what the girl told the guy, and then also his quick sighting of it as it ran off into the woods. It sounds to me like it was the mythical satyr.
Yeah, and it was, according to him, this happened like years ago, but obviously still in the age of cell phones. I didn't get a time frame of what year, but he did say that it took a while for her to actually open up, and she first opened up to his sister.
Mm-hmm.
And so, so that's one story. Now, another story I'm going to go into, was I got a good friend, and my nephew who's here with us, actually, you know who he is. He worked for a friend of mine, and I'm not going to give too much else because he's got a company that he does, and I don't want people, messing with him. But he told me a story. Listened to one of my Dogman shows a couple years back, and was like, I have a story, but it's not a werewolf story, as he calls it. He don't call them Dogman, he calls them werewolves.
Well, I mean, that makes sense. That's what they resemble. People have grown up watching werewolf movies, and they depict them a certain way. Not the old Lon Chaney, human looking. Although I wouldn't count that out. Who knows? Well,
I got some reports of some stuff. I've heard some stuff. Like, here's what I got though. The guy's a good friend of mine.
Tell the story.
And I'm going to tell the story. And so he and his brother were up at the club, and we started talking, and I gave him a couple shots, loosened him up. And I said, do you think you could tell me what happened to you? He said it happened to him when he was a kid. And oddly enough, I know you, Sal, used to live in Spring,
Texas.
Yeah. And when he gave me this story, the first time we ever corresponded about it, I had my show, and I was down in Spring visiting my mother, who lived real close to you. Yeah. And I was he was here in Austin, and he said, I just heard your show. I got a story for you if you ever want to, And then when I tried to talk to him about it, he said, no, let me tell you about it when my brother's with me, and we can both tell you about it. So I just thought that was kind of interesting. But anyway, that's neither here nor there. We get to the club, and we start talking. And the reason I have these contacts in the clubs, because I used to run a nightclub for 10 years downtown. Everybody knows me downtown 6th Street as Wolf. So this guy starts to tell me his story with his brother. And he said it happened in Maryland. Now, him and his brother were jumping on the bed, as far as I know, and they jumped off of, one of them jumped off, I guess it was his brother, jumped off the top of the bunk bed, and as boys are rambunctious, and he tried to do a people's elbow or whatever was popular at that time. He tried to atomic bomb his brother. So they get thrown, he gets a busted arm, and they get thrown in the car, and his mom, she's like, why'd you do that? And I'm gonna spank your butt, and blah, blah, blah. And so they all end up with his aunt and his mom, or his moms, as he calls her.
Seeking medical attention,
Seeking medical attention in the nearest facility. So they lived about 7-8 miles out in the country, or outside of the main city. So they get to going in the car. And this story was really, now my brother was with me when he was telling the story, and I can tell you who was with me. It was crazy, dude. When he was telling us the story, these are big tough guys. They're bouncers, they're tough guys. And I thought they were going to maybe tear up, but it was cool that they were two brothers. They were there together. And now I tell you that these guys, they look like they should be in the NFL. They're big guys, big boys. And so anyway, they said that I think his brother's a couple years older than him, and I believe they said that one was 7 and one was 9 or something like that. And they said they were little bitty, and they didn't tell me his older brother's age, but my friend told me he was 7, so I guess his brother would be 9. And his older brother, I guess he busted his arm, And he said that he was like they were in the car. Mom was already aggravated. They're going down the road, and out of nowhere, I mean, just completely out of nowhere, something goes over the hood of the car. And now he said it was like a big car. I can't remember that. I'm not good with cars and models and makes. My wife, she's like the car guru, whatever. Not me. I think he said it was like a big Oldsmobile. Right. Okay, now don't quote me. I don't know for sure, but he said it was like a big 4-door Oldsmobile. I think that's what he said. I'd have to ask my brother. My brother was there when he said it. So he goes over the top of the hood, and he said that this thing. He said that he got a good look at it. It had like fur where the legs were, and he saw hoof. And he said that this thing went over the top of the car and kind of hammer-fisted, as he said, the windshield where on his mom's side, and just kind of slid over the top of it, and they went flying off the road into a ditch. Now, they didn't hit nothing. They just kind of kept going, and they went in, and she lost control a little bit. Luckily, they didn't flip or anything like that, and they just came to a stop, and everybody was just like, oh my gosh, what the heck was that, you know? Now, they all were just sitting there stunned, you know? And he said his aunt turned around and was like, okay, is everybody okay? And his mother, he said, my mother never looked back. She just was staring straight ahead and was like, what was that? Now, he said that, now, when him and his brother were telling me the story, they said that to this day, as of when he told me this story, that their mom will never talk about it. She will not talk about it. The only thing she ever said was she didn't know what it was. Like, there was no, you know. Now, the aunt, she's been very, you know, open about it. And when they talked to their cousin, and the aunt said to the cousin, yeah, that it looked like a goat man, like a man. And she saw the head, said it had horns. It had an elongated face, but still human looking.
Right.
And that it hit the windshield, slid across the top of this car. Now, that wasn't the end of it. Now, they're sitting in a ditch, and the mom is trying to get her bearings, and then something goes to the back of the car, and then they hear toot, like thud on the bumper, I guess, not the bumper, the trunk, on the trunk of it. Mm-hmm. And then something goes over the top, and at that point, the aunt turns around and says, just bow your heads, we're going to pray, and tries to get them under control. They are crying, and they said that they didn't look up. They did what their aunt said. They kept their heads down, and the aunt was like, oh, man, telling this story is like, oh, okay. Anyways, it's freaking me out, dude. So anyway, the aunt, because I felt really bad for these guys. These are my friends, and I felt really bad for one in particular was my friend, but it was hard to listen to. Yeah,
I can only imagine the
So anyway,
these kids
the aunt turned around and told them to bow your head, that it's okay, we're going to pray. And then the mother got herself together, and she's telling the mother, saying her name, I'm not going to say her name, and she's like, we need to go. And then if the car can move, go. Because the mom was just stunned. This thing went over the top of the car and turned. The aunt turned around, got another good look at it. You know, it wasn't wearing clothes or anything like that. The mom pulled out, drove, got back on the highway, and this thing, as far as I know, didn't pursue them or whatever. And the aunt, one thing that was really weird was that the aunt said that it was like smiling the whole time. Like it did this to be spiteful, mean, evil, angry, whatever. Now that's a weird story. That's a crazy story.
It sounds like it was very deliberate. I mean, if it smiled, you know, this is really interesting because you do have some reports out there that, you know, people report a creature and it doesn't fit into the normal paradigm of whether it's Sasquatch or whether it's now, you know, what we commonly know as Dogman. You know,
and it's terrifying. There's people that tell you these stories, and we see creatures on TV all the time. They're called politicians, and but you know, most of us though don't live that. Like I had a traumatic experience when I was 15, but you know, it doesn't make you prepared to hear about two people when they were little boys being terrorized by some sort of demon in the woods or whatever. It's a horrible thing, you know. And I didn't, at that point, my friend told me, he's like, I told you once, I'm never going to talk about it again. That's it. I'm done. You know, I told you, you got my story. And we were all standing there and we're like, okay, that's it. You know, we didn't push. I didn't say, well, how'd things go at the hospital? Did you get to the, I didn't start talking all that. He said, me and my mom's, we don't talk about it. She won't talk about it. My auntie talks about it. My mom's won't. Well, that's cool. It's all good, brother. And whatever. And if you're out there listening and you know who you are, I appreciate you telling me your story. He told me that actually he doesn't really listen to my Dogman stories anymore because they freak him out. So I don't blame him.
Well, he's right to do so. He's had his own unexplained experience with a creature that is, by all sense of the word, it's all accounts, all sense of all the words. It's not
mythical.
It's not in mainstream.
It's supposed
science.
to be a mythical
it's
being.
A myth. Yeah,
that's right.
And that right there, in and of itself, is extraordinary. It just makes you wonder. What other stories?
What else is out there, right?
Yeah,
so here, let me tell you now. I got another Goatman story. Now I'm going to do a little small, little snippet here about Burt Wall. I was going to tell you, I read all his books. If anybody ever wants to read, it's all about the Devil's Backbone. It's a very haunted valley, strip of road, valley / whatever hills. And
yeah, it's in the hill country.
It's in the hill country. Thank you.
Texas,
I was losing my. So anyway, Burt Wall, he died several years ago. I read all of his books. He had one about after he'd had a stroke called The Long Grey Tunnel. That was a very touching book. He was an author, and he actually lived and died out there in the Devil's Backbone. And he was on Unsolved Mysteries. There's an old episode, I think, from 1996. I think. I could be wrong. 95. It was way back.
Well, they're on Amazon Prime, so you could watch.
Yeah,
all the seasons.
I have them on disc. So anyway, Burt Wall, he gets on there. He talks about it. He's a good old dude, and so he claimed in one of his books that there was a goat creature that had been responsible for killing cattle, and that some of the ranchers out there, they hired a guy to track it down. They all went out there and they found it in a cave. Now there are some shallow caves out there, and that going out that way too is it's in that same corridor where there's a lot of Dogman activity. We're talking about the ranch,
the Hernandez Ranch.
The Hernandez Ranch, yeah, and of course them. Everybody knows them pretty well, but they try to keep their anonymity as best as possible. But people know that's that whole area right there, that whole corridor. Now, I got another Goatman story. Now, this one actually is up near Dallas.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah, and so this guy claims that years ago, his uncle was. There's a bridge out there. Now, I don't even know the exact bridge. This is something that I just read. I could read it verbatim, but it's just a little story. And my wife, she likes the Goatman stories. She's always like, do these, like she wanted to, this is why we're doing the Goatman. So I told her, I said, I'm going to start off with those Goatman stories because she likes them. But this guy, he sent me one, and it was something I read. I couldn't really get in touch with the guy. And it is like somebody else's story that he told. Well, this involved a bridge. He said when his uncle was a teenager. Now, this guy that sent me this story is probably in his 20s. So his uncle is probably my age. He probably thinks he's an old man, which I guess I am now. But anyway, I don't feel that way. But anyway, his uncle's probably about my age. And so they went out on a bridge when they were teenagers. And so I'm assuming this is probably in the 90s, or something. And so they went out in this bridge, and something chased them off of that bridge. Like they went onto the bridge. They were throwing rocks and talking. It was him and a female, a girlfriend, whatever. I guess a girlfriend. He said him and a girl, And they were throwing rocks off into the water, and something came out of the darkness on one side of that bridge and just came running toward them. And they looked, and he said that his uncle said that it had the head of a goat with really big, tall horns and the hooves, everything. He said it looked like the devil.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, the devil looks like a goat, I guess. And he said that it just looked like the devil, and that it came toward him. And he said that when they ran, he was in a Jeep, so they didn't have to do much. They just jumped in right. and they drove through a bunch of brush and everything to get, because this was a defunct bridge. I'm assuming that it was defunct. And they had to go up off of that bridge, and they drove through some brush, and this thing pursued them for a little ways, and then that was it. Now, apparently there's a legend there that this particular bridge is haunted by a goat.
A Goatman, a goat entity of sorts.
Yeah, and there was somebody that claimed he claimed that another guy that his uncle knew had a tire Apparently that's what this thing does. It like in that whatever that particular that it throws tires at people. It throws debris. You know, people dump stuff. You know.
Wow, that talk about that story.
So the Goatman, that Goatman is a Fred Sanford of goats. It collects
it puts a new spin on that old story, the three billy goats grow.
Yeah, well, maybe there's something to the old German folklore of the bridge being where the Goatman comes. Yeah, I mean, and then now the last thing I want to talk about. And me and you debated this back and forth. Mm-hmm. It was a story that could have been Dogman, but it could have been Goatman. But we haven't had any Goatman stories out of that region. Now it was Tennessee, right? It was the middle of Tennessee, and these people were driving through. I'm just going to give you the rundown real quick. That something was thrown in the middle of the road, and it flattened their tires. It was a big messed up log. They almost lost control. For about 3 hours. There was these two creatures that were circling the van, beating on the van, and the people inside the van were freaking out. Two couples, young people, and this happened back in the late 70s. And the best description of the guy, he said that it happened to his dad. It was his dad and his uncle. And the two girls they were with weren't his mom and his aunt. So apparently they didn't stay with these women. They
were probably in high school for all we know.
Well, you know what? And maybe that was the deal breaker. They were like, Goatman comes and attacks us when we're together. We can't be together, you know. So to avoid any more paranormal disturbances, we should probably not date. So so anyway. The description. Now, I debated this with my wife. I debated it with you. Is it a Dogman? Is it a Goatman? It could be. I don't know what it is. I mean,
well, one thing for sure we know is it
because the description was it was hairy creatures that were not Bigfoot. They did not look like a typical Sasquatch, and that they had these weird backward bent legs, which you know. But they couldn't get a good enough look at the faces, you know. And they were beating on the van, and it was like they were messing with them. He said they were like 5 to 6 foot tall.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, which is typically Dogman. If that is a Dogman, we're talking about juveniles here. Yeah. Maybe they're mischievous juvenile Dogman. I've heard of that, you know. But that sounds more like a Goatman type, creature. I don't know. You know what? Draw your own conclusions, guys. I tell you what. But that's going to wrap it up for now. The thing I want to tell you guys is I have a show coming up, and then the next one we're going to maybe talk about some ghosts. And maybe we're gonna get into some. We don't know yet. We're gonna decide what we're gonna do. Me and my pal Sal. My pal Sal. That sounds pretty good.
Oh, there you go.
So we're gonna the episode that we're talking about is about a house, about a haunted house that terrorized some people in the haunted house.
Well, that's interesting.
It's.
I've never personally I can never say that I had.
A haunted house as a pet?
Well, no. Any real ghost, anything happened to me, but I'm always interested in the whole topic just because number one, it's hard to really figure out, you know, because you're dealing with supposedly ghosts, which are intangible. How do you make the intangible tangible? Mm-hmm. Now, I've got a buddy of mine.
Know what? When it slaps you on the back, that's tangible.
Well, I believe it. I mean, if you feel a slap on the back, you feel a slap on the back. That's just all there is to it. I have a buddy that lives up in near the Fort Worth, Dallas area, and he's a professional ghost hunter. And I need to
get him on the show.
Yeah, if we can, we're definitely
absolutely. I'm up for whoever can come on the show. And
the good thing about it, he does it like I said. I met him in the Army when I was stationed in Germany for 3 years back in the mid '90s, and after we got out, after I left Germany, he stayed there for a while, and then he ended up stateside as well. But and then he got out after about 8 years. He put in 8 years, and he started his own company. And of course, he did pretty well for himself. And then I'd say probably about 7, 8 years ago, maybe even almost 10. I'm not 100% sure, but he sold his company, and so he was semi-retired, and we caught up again just out of the blue. Got lucky. I saw him on Facebook, and I friended him.
So he's a ghost hunter now? That's what he's doing?
Yeah, well, that's his hobby. But he goes about it very scientifically. I mean, since he is doing okay for himself. I'm not saying he's filthy rich.
But he goes around with the
money.
EMF.
Yeah, he does it all.
Yeah,
he's
you know what?
Always going the scientific route.
This particular house that was done. And
Oh,
we
wow.
had psychics and everything else. I'll just tell you folks right now, I lived in that house.
Yeah.
And so we had some stuff go down. Anyways, that's going to wrap it up. We need to plug the email again, doswolfman88@gmail.com. And we hope you guys have an enjoyable day, weekend, night, wherever it is, and whatever land you're from.
Definitely. And we hope that you guys enjoyed our content that we covered. And it was a brief thing. This is the pilot episode. And this is where, if people want to know what we're about, well, we're not here to disparage any other researchers or channels or anything. We're just here sharing what we know, the stories that have come to us. And, we're trying to help people make sense of it as best as possible with, utilizing our common sense as much as possible. We know there's a lot of things that are not going to make sense, but hey, that's part of it. It's why it's unexplained, but there's, no rule against trying to figure out what's going on. There's no rule against saying, hey, let's employ some common sense and let's try to make some sense of it. So that you can get together.
think in China there is a law against trying to make common sense of anything paranormal.
Thank God we are not in China.
Outlawed Buddhist monks from reincarnating. So
thank God we're not in China.
Thank God we're in the old U.S. of A. Right?
Heck yeah. So
and we're in the Republic of Texas. That's
yes,
where we're
we
from.
are.
That's where
We're
from.
here in the Lone Star State.
Lone Star State. And I tell you what, we'll be back again, me and Sal, and I appreciate you coming on and being with me, and everybody, sayonara.
Have a good night, everybody.